Hello, and welcome back to the Public Human Resource Management course. This week's topic is disciplining employees. Employee discipline is one of the most difficult issues in HR that many managers try to avoid. This is because disciplining involves a confrontation, or at the very least, providing negative feedback. And most people, as you know by nature, do not like providing and receiving negative feedback. This is due to cognitive and emotional factors. People tend to view themselves more positively than others might view them. So when they do receive critical feedback, they usually view it as inaccurate and become defensive. Managers typically dislike providing negative feedback because it is stressful, it may elicit an unpredictable reaction from employees, and generally makes working day-to-day with the said employee rather unpleasant. Managers also experience what's called actor or observer bias and are more likely to attribute failures to subordinates and underestimate their successes. As a result, disciplining employees is one of the most challenging managerial tasks, but avoiding it has significant negative repercussions. First, public sector employees are paid by the taxpayers. So keeping low-performing employees on the payroll is a waste of taxpayer resources. Low performance of private sector employees is usually addressed pretty swiftly because that affects the company's bottom line. Public sector managers have a fiduciary responsibility to effectively use taxpayer funds. This is why they need to deal with low-performing employees in a timely manner. Second, morale of high-performing employees will be negatively affected if they have colleagues who put little effort into doing their jobs and they get away with it. So demonstrating to employees that a manager will address low performance of an employee is critical to the morale of the team. Effective disciplinary measures correct misconduct and change unacceptable behavior. The goal is not to punish the employee. Discipline should be progressive, which means it starts with minimum discipline necessary to change employee behavior and progressively increases depending on the severity or how often this type of undesired behavior is repeated. There should be parity in the application of disciplinary action, where sanctions are similar for similar offenses. There are instances, however, when progressive discipline is inappropriate. Egregious misconduct, for example, should result in immediate termination of the employee. Examples of egregious misconduct include misuse of public funds for personal gain, inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, falsification of employment application or other relevant documentation, using public office for private gain, behavior that results in criminal indictment, and other corrupt or criminal conduct. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, Department of Human Resources distinguishes misconduct as Group 1 offenses for minor conduct and progressively increases to Group 3 for offenses that warrant immediate termination. There are several elements or phases in employee discipline. They include employment probationary period, regular constructive feedback, effective performance appraisal, opportunities to improve through additional training or mentoring, warnings, and termination, also referred to as firing or transitioning out, depending on how diplomatic you want to be. Many public and private sector jobs have a probationary period. This period typically ranges from 3 months to 1 year, and in some cases goes up to 18 months. Managers need to pay close attention to the new employee's performance during this period. At the end of the probationary period, it's a good idea to conduct a 360-degree performance evaluation, which solicits feedback on the performance of the new employee from peers or customers. If there are red flags, such as poor motivation, or significant skills gap, or inability to perform key tasks, A permanent job should not be offered to this employee. Providing regular feedback to employees is important, so if there are any deficiencies in performance, the employee can correct them. Feedback should be primarily verbal, but when appropriate, maybe because the work is remote or the nature of the comments is complex, then a written feedback would be also appropriate. Feedback should be specific, constructive, and actionable. Cannon and Witherspoon's article that was assigned for this course provides specific recommendations about what makes feedback constructive and actionable. Feedback should also be a two-way street, so it's important for the manager not only to provide feedback to employees, but to also listen carefully. If the employee shares that there are extenuating circumstances that explain subpar job performance, and it may be health issues or other personal circumstances, then the manager should offer resources. Resources that are typically available include employee assistance programs. Employee assistance programs provides a number of sessions at no charge for such services as mental health, alcohol and drug abuse assessment, child or elder care, grief counseling, and legal or financial services. Effective performance appraisal is another tool that should be used to prevent the need to discipline an employee. Performance appraisal should be developmental, where feedback is geared toward helping the employee improve their performance and develop their skills to succeed in the workplace. Managers should clearly articulate weaknesses and outline specific areas for improvement. It's also a good idea to describe what success looks like. For example, for an employee who interacts with visitors or customers, a manager can specify performance standards, such as communicates with customers in a courteous and professional manner, does his or her best to positively resolve customer requests. For positions and employees whose jobs require writing policy memos, for example, what success looks like could be articulated as policy memos are well written, they fully address the assigned topic, and are submitted on time. Once it becomes clear that the employee's performance is not up to par, he or she needs to be given an opportunity to improve. To enable the employee to improve, they would need tools such as additional training or on-the-job training. An effective way to demonstrate what is expected in terms of performance might be shadowing a high-performing employee who is in a similar role. Or perhaps taking a course which would improve a skill set that's lacking would be a tool that helps the employee improve their performance. The manager needs to develop a plan with the employee which is directed at helping to improve his or her misconduct or subpar performance. If possible, the manager needs to set a realistic timeline for improvement and be very clear about the consequences. If misconduct or poor performance continues, the manager may choose to admonish the employee, providing a strong message that further incidents of similar misconduct may lead to more formal action. A verbal admonishment may be followed by a written admonishment if the employee fails to improve. After all informal attempts have failed and the misconduct still continues, then the supervisor may decide to formally discipline the employee. At this point, the HR office needs to be involved. A written notice may be accompanied by additional actions such as suspension, a demotion, a transfer with reduced responsibilities with a disciplinary salary action, meaning there would be a reduction in salary, or a transfer to an equivalent position in a different work area. And sort of the most serious form of discipline, of course, is termination. So a written notice may be accompanied by termination if the offense is serious enough. The final phase of employee discipline is termination. Termination is warranted if all informal and formal efforts to improve performance or misconduct did not result in any improvement, or if the nature of misconduct is serious enough to warrant immediate termination. Examples of serious misconduct include physical violence, threatening others, absence from work for more than 3 days without authorization, and falsification or misuse of state records. If the employee poses danger to himself or others, makes it impossible for the organization to conduct its routine business, or hampers an investigation, immediate removal from the workplace is warranted while the agency is conducting an investigation. Typically, this kind of removal would qualify as pre-disciplinary leave, and it could be with or without pay. The HR office needs to be involved in this process to make sure that the employee rights and due process have been observed. This is the end of the lecture on employee discipline. Thank you for your attention and take care.